Welcome to this week's episode of the Rally Podcast, where we help rally today's youth under the banner of Christ and possibly answer a question or two. I'm your host, Andrew Pemberton, and with me always is Pastor Mark Dowell of the Rally Youth here in Temple, Texas.
Hello.
We're just going to dive right into, like we did last week, and we're going to dive right into asking for a friend here. So I think the first question we have, Pastor Mark has.
Okay. The question I have here says, what do I do when I don't even feel convicted anymore, or even the presence of God? I think this is something that we all deal with. It's not something that we're alone in. Mm-hmm. Everyone deals with this, and I've always found that it's never because of the Lord. It's always because of me. Mm-hmm. That there's something that either I'm doing or not doing that's not hindering him, but it's elevating something else in my life above him. Mm-hmm. And we have to set things down and go find him, is basically what I have to say. My answer for the next question will kind of go along with this one. Mm-hmm. But do you have an answer that you want to say?
I just remember, as a example, whenever I was younger, in my early teens, I dealt with that a lot. I remember going to my parents, all the time, because my parents were pastors, and tell them, I just don't get it. I don't feel God anywhere. And I wasn't necessarily chasing after God either, because I was kind of done with the church at that time. But after a certain amount of time of me just throwing a pity party for myself because I couldn't feel anything, mm-hmm. I finally just decided to bear down and try to figure out why is this. Kind of like what we were talking about last week about proving my own salvation to myself. And he started unveiling to me different unforgivenesses I had for other people and different walls I had built up inside my life and inside my heart that just was causing it to where he was pursuing me, but those walls were stopping him from being able to actually get inside of me. And it was just a process of this day to day for a good while, but a process of this him helping me tear down those walls. And then it is doable. It's mm-hmm. a process, but it is doable. But you will start feeling him again if you allow him to show you what needs to be taken down.
Yeah. And I to add on to that as well from my own personal experience, even as a youth pastor, I feel this relatively often. And it's not because, and it goes with my answer before, it's not because of the Lord or what he's done or because of a message that I've been speaking on and now I just don't know what I'm doing next. It's really that I'm letting myself get distracted. Mm-hmm. It's whether we just kind of drift. We just kind of are those kind of people. Mm-hmm. Humans drift off and we get distracted with what's left or right of us. It kind of goes with FOMO, but not truly. It's mostly just that we're led by our feelings. And mm-hmm. the thing is, the Lord isn't just a feeling.
Yeah.
He gives us awesome feelings, but sometimes he wants us to just pursue him when we don't feel. Mm-hmm. In fact, if you read the word, that happens a lot. If you go into Psalms, David writes all the time of I don't feel your presence, but I'm still going to worship you. Mm-hmm. And that's all the time. And by the end of the Psalm, he's already feeling the Lord again. It's but it's important for us to understand that it's not about how you feel. Mm-hmm. While that is a good feeling sometimes that he gives us, he wants us to mature.
Yeah.
And grow out of being feeling based.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we always went off of what we were feeling, you can conjure up those feelings in other ways.
Yeah.
And I've known some people that have just fallen from the Christian faith because they've gone to some other religion somewhere, and that feeling, even though it's just a small glimpse of the true mm-hmm. feeling, you can still conjure it up, and it gets you confused.
Mm-hmm. And that's why we also have to be careful with, in worship or maybe a conference or things like that, places we go and to worship the Lord and make sure that we're worshiping and not just worshiping the feeling mm-hmm. of being in that concert or in that, great worship session or whatever the great speaker is speaking. Mm-hmm. We have to make sure and kind of remind ourselves, keep ourselves grounded. It's fine to feel feelings are I forget who said the quote, but feelings are great servants, but they're terrible masters. And if we lived by them, then we will end up thinking that since I don't feel the Lord or feel the presence or even feel convicted when I do something wrong, that, well, he's just not here anymore.
Yeah.
Or I'm, that like it's maybe it's just a rut you'll find yourself in is of just trying to live by feelings, and it just can't. Maybe at first when we're Christians, like as baby Christians, yeah, it started out that way. That makes sense. But we can't stay there. We have to grow.
Yeah. There's a guy that he's a lead singer of a band I like a whole lot. It's a 80s rocker band, but the band's called Bloodgood, and the guy's name is Les Carlson, and he talks about how being in the trenches and how we always want to be on the mountaintop, which is fine because God is at the mountaintop too. But the plants and the flowers only grow in the trenches. So if you want to get to the mountaintop, you have to be in the trenches from time to time.
That's good
because it helps God stretch you and mature you, like you were saying.
Yeah, he's the God of the mountain and the valley. Yeah.
Yep.
That's good.
All right, we'll go on to question number 2 here now, which is it okay to listen to explicit music?
Man, what a question. I am going to relate what the word says about us constantly, what Jesus calls us constantly, which is trees. All the way back to in Ezekiel and some other books that back in the Old Testament, to even Jesus referring to us multiple times as trees. Trees are really special to me, and it's because the Lord refers to us as trees often. And here's what he says in Matthew 12:33, and a little after that. Either assume the tree to be good as well as its fruit is good, or assume the tree to be bad as well as its fruit bad. For the tree is known by its fruit. You offspring of vipers, he was talking to Pharisees at this point. Another version is brood of vipers. How can you, being evil, express any good things? For the mouth speaks from that which fills the heart. The good person brings out of his good treasure good things, and the evil person brings out of his evil treasure evil things. But I tell you, for every careless word that people speak, they will give an account of it on the day of judgment. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. The reason I bring that up, and then it kind of refers to another scripture of it's out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. If we also look at the fact that faith comes by hearing, you can have faith in other things. Whether and faith isn't even just the act of believing, it's the living. Faith is the living. And if we're filling ourselves up with things, with junk, with explicit things, well, we can only expect those things to be coming back out of us. I think it's as simple as that. And if we find ourselves in the place where that truth hurts, or that truth we don't want to believe it, then maybe that thing has more of a hold on you than you think.
Yeah.
Or maybe we're just that addicted. That doesn't just go for music, though. That goes for books. That goes for shows. That goes for videos that we watch. That goes for... It's why I'm so against like horror genre at all. It goes for video games. It goes for everything. It goes for how we interact with people on social media. It goes for everything. And if we consider ourselves like a tree, and you constantly give a tree just trash, just bare minimum water, and just rocky, dry soil, and never fertilize it, never give it the good stuff, it will never produce good fruit. It might not even produce fruit at all. But if it does, it will be rotten, it will be gross, it will be bad. And if we're supposed to be like trees, then we always have to be fertilizing ourselves. We have to be giving ourselves the good stuff, the nutrition, the things that we know is good. And for music, that doesn't mean you have to listen to worship music genre all day long. I don't see a major problem with secular music other than you're filling yourself up with something that isn't the word and that isn't good music. If you're doing that more than you're giving yourself the good stuff, then there's the issue. Your balance is wrong. And I guess that's kind of where I go to, because we watch movies and shows and we're so against, or not against, but what's the word? We're so, I guess, numb to the explicit stuff in this day and age. It's not that the words themselves even are bad. It's the act and action and the feeling and the whatever's behind those words. And it goes from words. It goes to what we see. It goes to what we watch.
Yeah.
So it's more than just words, a cuss word here and there. It's, what is it talking about? What are you What are you listening to? Like, what, as in, what is it? What is it talking about? Is it talking about sex and drugs and whatever and all that stuff that are killing people or whatever? I don't know. There's so much junk music out there that we just kind of let go in the background of our lives that we don't realize that that's filling us up. And then, wow, maybe it goes back to the question of, I'm not feeling convicted anymore, and I'm not even feeling the presence of the Lord.
It's like, if you're feeling depressed, are you listening to artists and stuff that sing nothing but like depressing songs and things like that? Or are you watching like depressing movies?
Not wrong. And not that those in themselves cause it. It's the fact that it's like eating, and I remember speaking on this one time, it's like eating Taco Bell for every meal, lunch or breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then wondering why you have major stomach issues and you're always having to head to the bathroom. Like, you're wondering about that, and you're realizing you never realize the fact that you've just been filling yourself with junk constantly. And even the one, like, you might be eating really good, and then you fill yourself up with that one time, and it makes it really bad. And think of it in that way, that whatever is coming in will come out. And whatever, it depends on what you want to be your fruit of your tree. It depends on what you want your fruit to be. What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of Christian do you want to be? Or just think of it just as a person. I mean, it goes to the point we've been making for the last week of proving our salvation. And if we find that we're trying to fill up something else, add another number to our equation to make us feel good, and we're finding that our answer's weird, maybe there's a problem.
Yeah. And speaking of what we've been talking about last week, so last week, just kind of like a quick rundown of what we're talking about. We're talking about redefining the fear of missing out, and how we need to prove our own salvation to ourselves, not so much for other people, but to ourselves, so that when questions get asked to us or questions come up, we're not shaken by it.
Yeah.
You want to give us a quick rundown on that?
Yeah. So Romans 12, 1 and 2, I'll just go over it really quickly. It says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect." One thing I want to identify here is that word "prove" goes hand in hand with the other. It goes with the word "discern," and it goes with the word "discover." And those are all words that we use for ourself. Prove seems to people that you're proving to someone else. You're not having to prove to someone else what the will of God is. That's what the word here is, that you may prove what the will of God is. The word is discover and discern as well. So we have to discern. We have to start figuring out. We have to discover what the will of God is, and that comes, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that's something that we have to be in constant doing. We have to do personally. so that we may discover what the will of God is, that which is good, acceptable, and perfect. So the rundown, I would say, is we were kind of going to the baseline of the equation thing. And, the fact that 2 plus 2 equals 4, and we know the answer, and we've been told that 2 plus 2 equals 4, but we have to work it out for ourselves. When you do any sort of equation, you have to do the same thing. When you read a book, you have to read it for yourself to actually understand and make the assessment of it was good or not. When you watch a show, you could be told all about it, and you can know what people say are the reviews that they're good, but until you watch the show, you can't make the true assessment whether it's good or bad. You can have good advisors tell you it's bad or tell you it's good, but still, if you don't watch it, then you won't know for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's very, very kind of baseline how the word works, but the word has been proven many, many times by many, many people. I can say I've used not just the word, but just my relationship with the Lord, and my faith in God has been proven time and time again for myself and for my family. But if I was to just tell you that, you can believe me, but until you walk it out, you can't prove it.
Yeah.
You can just say, well, Mark did good. Like the Lord worked on his behalf.
Yeah, I can't live my own faith out on your faith.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we kind of got to the point of the reason we were redefining FOMO. I think often we find ourselves afraid to miss out on what the world is doing. And that's very broad, but think about it. What we're afraid to miss out on what the quote unquote fun that the world is having, or that our friends are having, doing something that maybe is wrong, or maybe missing out on something that's happening on social media or in a movie or show or whatever. I don't know. But we're finding ourselves afraid of what we're missing out on there, and we're not finding ourselves afraid that we're missing out on what the Lord has for us right now. We set it aside, and we say, we'll just come back to that later. When in reality, God has something for you right now. He doesn't want to wait until you're 35. He doesn't want to wait till you're 50. He doesn't want to wait till you're in a ministry position. He doesn't want to wait till you're volunteering somewhere where you're teaching someone. He doesn't want to wait for that. He wants to be with you right now and interact with you right now, and so you can experience him right now. And in every waking moment, he's always knocking. The word says that he stands at the door and knocks, but it's up to us to open it. Who will go open the door? We also kind of talked about the fact that it's not up to us to stir up that fear. That's like creating the feeling. It's like creating it's like conjuring up the feeling of, oh man, I need to be with you, Lord, like that kind of thing. It shouldn't be that we are creating the fear. We just need to seek out God, and he showing himself to us will make us fear missing him. I think the fear of God is less of being afraid of him and more of being afraid of being without him.
I agree.
You got to think about the angels. If you go into Revelation, there's angels constantly circling his throne and singing praise to him, because they're always finding new things that he's revealing to them, and as they seek him and everything. The reason that I believe that they would be afraid, they wouldn't know what to do if they were sent out of the throne room or whatever. That's their position, and they would be afraid without the Lord. Are we that way?
Yeah.
Or are we so reliant on ourselves, on our own hobbies, our own things that we do to give us satisfaction, that will only give us satisfaction for now, and never, not just even eternally, but even the long run? Like, where are we? And we were redefining that and for ourselves.
If I remember right, I think one of the things that came up this last Wednesday when you were talking about not bringing up the fear yourself was, I think it kind of goes a little bit off topic, but I think the subject of kind of the fear of feeling like you're not good enough in these situations came up. And one of the things that you started hitting on was started talking about the sacrifices that needed to be done back in like, the
Oh,
Old Testament.
yeah, yeah.
And he started talking about how Jesus now is the perfect sacrifice. Can you delve into that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I have no idea how we got on that topic, but it is a really good topic. It's our foundation in Christ is the fact that there has always been the need, the only way to atone or to pay for sin, the only way was and is through blood.
Mm-hmm.
Blood is the one thing, and it couldn't be blood of any person. It couldn't be blood of anything that wasn't spotless or perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they used spotless lambs, meaning not lame, not crippled, nothing wrong with it, not a blemish on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would have to be a spotless lamb. And it's obviously sad that you have to kill such a perfect creature.
Mm-hmm.
And they would use the same for calves. They would use the same for doves. They would use those things, and their blood was the only thing that would atone for people. And they could only, in the Old Testament, do it once a year, and the high priest had to do it. And if he messed up while he did it, he died.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so intense. And then the thing is, the day afterward, or even the moment afterward, as soon as you sinned again, you needed to be cleansed again.
Yep.
All that was for nothing. There was the old covenant, the old law was a good pointer as what is sin.
Mm-hmm.
It pointed at what was sin, but it never could save us.
Yeah.
And that's what Jesus did. Jesus living the perfect life as man and God, 100% man, 100% God, in his divine nature, yet suffering like a man and as a man, lived his life for the Lord and lived it for us so that he could be perfect, and then he'd be sacrificed and his blood completely spilled out for us.
Mm-hmm.
Which we already talked about, the perfect spotless lamb, the perfect spotless calf, the perfect spotless doves. Those things couldn't last.
Mm-hmm.
The blood couldn't last. And Jesus's blood still lasts.
Mm-hmm.
And it will forever. The word says that it's sprinkled on the mercy seat of heaven.
Mm-hmm.
That it's still there. And his blood is the only thing that cleanses us and can atone for our sin. So I think there's nothing that we can do in ourself, no action that we can perform, no specific law that we can uphold that will make us righteous, that will make us holy, that will make us good. There is nothing. Only Jesus' blood. Only the righteousness he gives us, and only living in him is what makes us righteous and what makes us good. And in ourselves there is no good. In the Lord there is only good. And I think that also goes to why we are constantly supposed to be transforming into him and not conforming to the world. But I think that's kind of where I was going.
And that plays in really well to the second question that I was going to ask. That's a real broad one. Is last week we were talking about how we know that the Bible is the answer. We know Jesus is the answer. Now, why is Jesus the answer? Like, and what you were talking about with the perfect sacrifice part, to me, really plays into it, because it's still one of the things that blows my mind is the fact that Jesus was the only human that ever fulfilled the law 100%, which, there was like 600 and something laws at that time.
Added to the Ten Commandments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was the only one that could do that out of, like, you read through the Bible and see how many times he could have messed up along the way.
Oh, yeah.
Like, when he went out to the wilderness to get tempted, how many times the Pharisees came after him, and he could have fallen just to anger in those situations. He got betrayed the night that he got sent to I forget, Romans, right? Romans came after him.
Yeah.
All these things that us as humans, which he was a human too, would fall into wanting to, like, I would want to strangle the man, that came after me.
Yeah.
And you see all these things, and he was spotless up until he went on the cross. Still spotless when he went up there, but then he absorbed every sin of humanity in that moment,
Yeah.
and then went to hell after that. To finally get the keys of death back from Satan.
Yeah.
And it's like, to me, that's why he's the answer. And like we were talking about, you still need to go prove this for yourself. You need to go read the Bible and study this for yourself. But it still blows my mind thinking of that.
The reason he had to was because, and the word talks about how he was the second Adam. There's the first Adam who was perfect and fine before Satan tempted him. And when Satan tempted him, then he fell, and all of humanity after him, which came from him, fell. And so we were all fallen, and that's why Jesus, the second Adam, who was not born of just man, but also of God, that's why the virgin birth is absolutely necessary, to understand that he was born of a virgin who was not, his father is God. Like, that's how crazy that is, how awesome that is.
Yeah.
And yeah, he could have fallen at any moment there. And I think that's important for us to understand. He even talks about how even the thought of some thoughts, even thoughts can be sin. Even he says, not only do I tell you to not sleep with another man's wife, to not commit adultery, but don't commit adultery in your mind. Don't even lust after someone. That's sin in your mind. And think about that. Jesus had every opportunity not only to just act on and perform a sin, but he had every opportunity to think about sin. He never did, because he was constantly filled with God. If you go and see that he wasn't just walking around doing good things all day, he would do tons of good things and perform miracles and preach and teach, but he would also separate and go be alone with the Father all the time. And when he died, he didn't lose his humanity, and he didn't lose his godhood either. He rose again as a man as well, and God. And the thing is, I think another thing that makes that reason why it blows our mind is because it goes beyond our human understanding, because we are in sin nature. Imagine not having to follow the rules that we thought we had to follow because, he's not sinful.
Yep.
The Lord can do whatever he wants because he's not sinful. He's not bound by sin. He's able to do whatever God can do, which we know is anything. That's why there's times where he's walking through walls, or where he ascends literally into heaven. Like, there is those things after he's dead. He's not even bound to human body kind of thing, whatever we can do. He just does whatever he wants now. He wins.
Yep.
And so I go off topic there, but I think it's important for us to realize that he could have been tempted, like you said, in any way, even in his mind, and never did. And that's why we can trust in him. That's why he's the answer. He has suffered everything that we have, and he was tempted in every way, and yet was without sin. So that's one reason he's the answer. I believe it's the main reason. He is the Son of God, but again, you're right. We have to work it out. You have to not only just, I think it even goes beyond just reading about him. We have to live with him.
Yeah, I need to walk day to day with him.
You need to walk day to day with him. That is that's more important.
Oh,
Go ahead. I was gonna say, think about the fact that, like, the apostles, they didn't have the Bible that we have. They had the Old Testament. They had everything from there, and they could see Jesus through the text. But not only that, they had to fellowship with Jesus constantly. Like when Paul separates himself for 3 years after getting set free from the blindness that he gets stricken by for persecuting the church, he separates himself for 3 years just to be with the Lord.
Yeah.
And in spirit, like Jesus comes in spirit and speaks with him. And then he goes out and starts his ministry and does everything. And he still relates to the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
It's all over the place. And I just like thinking about that because if they could do that without the word, I'm not saying that we should, because it's amazing that we have the word. It's amazing we have the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
But if they could do it without the Bible, how much more can we do with it?
Yeah.
And it's more than just reading it. It's walking it out. It's living with him. It's not even just putting his principles into action. It's just fellowshipping with him.
Mm-hmm.
And you will see he's the answer.
Mm-hmm. And to me, like, the more you start doing that, the funner it gets.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, delving into me personally, like, I've been going through all the Johns, including the Apostle John, like, including
the first, second, third John.
first, second, third,
and Gospel of John.
Yeah, Gospel of John. And going in there and actually studying out, like, when Jesus, like, one of my favorite parts is the Last Supper, and seeing how, because before, like, in the Last Supper, I've liked that story.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's just a good story. Jesus washes their feet, has the last meal with them. But then when you realize when he talks to Judas at that moment, Jesus knows Judas is going to betray him here in just a couple hours. And yet he takes a piece of the bread from the communion they were having and dips it in the wine and hands it to him. Even though he said, whoever I hand this to will be the one that's going to betray me. But he's doing that because that was a sign at that time of showing, this is my best friend. I'm giving him the best of what I can get.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I never saw that before, because it's like, how can you say that to someone that's literally about to hand you over to the devil, pretty much? And you realize that's like what you're talking about with how things in your mind is sin just as much as would be, if you actually hated someone.
Mm-hmm.
That shows you that he had no hate
Mm-hmm.
towards him whatsoever, because he wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And that's just one example of when you delve in to that kind of stuff, what you can find.
Yeah. I also love that story because he talks about that being the bread being his flesh and the wine being his blood, and he's giving it for us.
Mm-hmm.
And he gives it to him personally.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't doing it to point him out. He was, yes, but he was also, I think there was forgiveness in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, cause it was, he even said, I know Satan's there. He's moved in,
Mm-hmm.
and he's the one causing this. But, and then obviously Judas had some issues, especially with money. He had some issues.
Yeah.
But I think there was even forgiveness in what Jesus did right there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he gave his flesh and blood for him as well.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
So here's kind of a bonus question then. Do you think if Judas wouldn't have, like, killed himself, would he have been able to be, like, his life would have been turned around?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's almost like Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Paul wasn't it didn't say that he murdered, but he held people's coats while they murdered, while they stoned, or he dragged people out to go into prison and be tortured for being Christian.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, absolutely. There's no limit. And I think that Judas could have been, if it wasn't prophesied that all that was going to happen, Judas could have been one of the disciples again, one of the apostles again.
Yeah.
And it could have been one of those situations where if he had a true turn of heart, like the Lord could do that.
Mm-hmm.
It could be one of those situations where it's like how, was it Peter who jumped out of the boat to swim to Jesus whenever he revealed himself again all of a sudden? I think Judas would have been right there.
Mm-hmm.
If the disciples would have forgiven him,
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely, I think so.
I feel like that story's kind of used, like, because, like, whenever we mess up big time, we start blaming ourselves a lot, and we feel like Jesus can't forgive us. I think the way I've always seen it is the parallel between Judas and Peter, and how Judas couldn't forgive himself, and he let that bear down him. Granted, Satan was involved in that, and he was messing with his brain, to where it drove him to suicide. While Peter, he still blamed himself, but like he said, whenever Jesus showed up, he went straight to him, and then became one of the founders of the church that we know of today.
Yeah. Good point, because I think there is a parallel there. I mean, Judas, yes, sold him out, but Peter literally denied him 3 times after saying he wouldn't.
And then cursed him the last time.
And then cursed him the last time.
Mm-hmm.
The Jesus he knew. And he knew him personally.
Mm-hmm.
And he still did it. And,
Yep.
I think, yeah, and we all should go read it again because it's so good. But the fact that he ran to him first and the Lord did not hold him against him at all.
Mm-hmm.
At all.
One of the greatest stories of redemption in the Bible right there.
100%. 100%. After that point, Peter started getting things right. He was one of those dudes who just up and down. Man said some good things and just did the stupidest things, and then he finally gets it.
Yeah.
But only when Jesus truly, he really saw that Jesus forgave him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oof.
Man, I got a little off topic, but I still liked it.
That's all right. Yeah, that was good. I like talking about this stuff. Jesus is good. So.
Yep. Well, I think that's going to end this episode this week. We're going to delve a bit deeper next week. I don't know what the heck we're going to be talking about next week. I think it's going to be my turn to be the
you're going to be the one. I'm going to ask you some questions.
Oh boy. And hopefully next week we get one of our youth here to talk with us too.
Yeah.
If y'all happen to live in the Central Texas area, come check us out at Trinity Church at Temple. Our services are at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. on Sunday mornings, and we have services for all ages at 7 p.m. on Wednesday nights. If you want more info, come check us out on tctemple.com or Trinity Church of Temple on our Facebook page, or you can download our app, which is Trinity Church of Temple on any app store. See y'all next week.